Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. The Republican National Convention kicks off tonight. It starts about a half an hour from now. We expect it to look pretty different from the convention last week. Many of the speeches will have actual people watching, human beings. Stick with Fox if you want to see any of it. The other networks are still deep into their exhaustive coverage of the post office. They believe they've apprehended the president of the United States stealing mailboxes, possibly with the help of the Ukrainians. They're on that story wall to wall. We, by contrast, have not gone insane, so we'll be bringing you the news as we always do. Stay tuned for that. We begin tonight with a Fox News alert. Violence erupted last night in Kenosha, Wisconsin. That's a city of about 100,000 people, roughly between Chicago and Milwaukee. Police there had an altercation with a man called Jacob Blake, who apparently was wanted on multiple charges, including sexual assault. News accounts say Blake had an extensive history of run-ins with the law. That would include an arrest for threatening people with a gun and committing violence against police officers. Yesterday, Blake refused police orders to surrender. When he appeared to reach for something in the darkness, police officers shot him. Here's the 10-second video of the exchange now circulating on social media. Jacob Blake is in the hospital tonight. News accounts say he's expected to survive his wounds. An investigation into exactly what happened late yesterday afternoon in Kenosha is underway. That is the sum total of what we know for certain. We care about this country, so we're not going to pretend that we know more than we actually do. Nobody knows at this stage. So we're going to avoid irresponsible speculation designed to inflame fear and race hate in the population. There's been more than enough of that already this summer. Ben Crump, by contrast, doesn't think there's been enough of it. Crump is a personal injury attorney who works on commission. Much of his practice is devoted to suing companies that manufacture talcum powder. Crump has suggested that talcum powder is a kind of racial conspiracy to harm black women. Ben Crump is taken with the utmost seriousness by our guilty, idiotic news media. In a statement today, Crump announced that he has been retained by the Blake family. He denounced Jacob Blake's shooting as an act of racism. Now, to be clear, as a factual matter, Ben Crump does not know if that's actually true. He has no idea. He would have no way of knowing. But he said it anyway. Mobs around Kenosha made the very same assumption that Ben Crump did. Just minutes after Jacob Blake was shot, rioters descended on the city, setting fires and hurting people, as is their customary reaction. Rioters smashed storefronts, municipal buildings, a museum, a post office, restaurants. They wrecked a library. They torched an entire car dealership, a number of garbage trucks, and what they thought was a police cruiser. Here's footage of it. Another civil rights demonstration. Nothing says civil rights like destroying libraries and car dealerships. In parts of Kenosha, police officers found themselves surrounded. Mobs pressed in from all sides. At one point, rioters threw molotov cocktails. One officer was hit in the head with a brick. He dropped to the pavement unconscious. The mob cheered.
The police are trying to leave Kenosha, but they're not letting them. What happened?
Oh, he just got bricked. He just got bricked.
He got bricked, the man said. Apparently, smashing cops in the head until they stop moving is now common enough that there is a name for it. It's hard to believe this is happening in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Before yesterday afternoon, Kenosha was best known for its Jelly Bean Museum and the Mars Cheese Castle. Kenosha was a nice place. But it's happening everywhere now, even in nice places. Of course it is. No one in charge has stopped this for months, so naturally the violence and the disorder have metastasized. Watch this tape from a formerly pleasant suburb outside the city of Chicago. This happened on Saturday. If you're confused by what the people who live there did wrong, they're confused too. The short answer is nothing. Their crime was having the wrong appearance, and for that, the mob threatened them in their homes.
They're looking at us! Bring your ass down here! Look at them! Look at them just looking at us! Black people used to live here! 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 Fire, fire, tetra fire! Fire, fire, tetra fire!
Get down here, they screamed. What is that? Well, it's a threat. How long before these people do what they did to the car dealership in Kenosha? We may find out. Where's the Justice Department here? Where's the so-called Civil Rights Division? Nowhere to be found. It's a joke. And what happens long term when the government proves that it's in fact a joke? When no one pushes back against threats like this? Well, they become violence, and no one is pushing back. Here's a similar scene from Portland, Oregon on Friday.
Wake up! 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 I hear you! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up!
You may not live in Portland, Oregon, but imagine if you did. Imagine if they did that on your street, the street that you pay taxes to maintain. Your kid's asleep upstairs, all of a sudden a mob is shining lights in your windows in the middle of the night and screaming threats and obscenities at your family. What would you do if that happened? Would you cower inside and take it? Let's hope you wouldn't. When decent people stay fearful and passive, things fall apart. Many wrongly assume they can buy their way out of the chaos by hanging the right signs in their yards or mouthing the correct political slogans. Maybe if I seem sympathetic, they'll leave my family alone. Yeah, no. That's wishful thinking. It won't work. It never works. Because the point is not to convince you of anything. The point is to crush you and to humiliate you in front of your family. Take a look at this church in Kenosha from last night. It's a Unitarian congregation, so of course they put the fashionably correct words on the billboard outside. Did the mob care? No, they didn't care. They burned it anyway. So who exactly are the people doing this, the people committing violence across the country? Well, in a phrase, it's thugs led by nihilists. Most of the looting is done by criminals and opportunists, people who want free stuff from Hermes and the Nike store. But all of the politics are controlled by angry people who went to college, educated people with an agenda. Watch this interview with a BLM activist at the University of Illinois. It tells you everything about where the poison in this country is coming from.
Protesters say police have no business working with students when they're responsible for striking Black Lives Matter demonstrators.
I didn't even hit the ground. My head didn't even get a chance to hit the ground. I hit my megaphone, and I still got a concussion. That's how hard a grown white man wearing a uniform that I paid for him to wear, that's how hard he pushed me.
I don't want the next Jeff Bezos out of this school. I don't want the next Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. I want the next Nelson Mandela. I want the next Angela Davis. I want the next Assata Shakur.
I want the next Assata Shakur. Who's Assata Shakur? Otherwise known as Joanne Chesimard of Flushing, Queens. Well, she's a kidnapper. She's a murderer. She murdered a cop. She's an escaped prison inmate who has spent the past 36 years hiding in Cuba, sucking up to the Castros and being deified by American college professors. If you have kids in college, they probably know all about Assata Shakur. They probably revere her. They've been taught to. Assata Shakur is exactly the kind of student that kid hopes the University of Illinois will produce. And increasingly, that's exactly the kind of student our colleges do produce. Democratic politicians applaud this, the rise of mindless radicalism, of violence, of destruction. Why? Because it means more votes for them. And that's why, since Memorial Day, they have encouraged violence in the streets. They're no longer hiding it. They weren't hiding it yesterday. After last night's riots in Kenosha, both the city's Democratic mayor and the governor of Wisconsin, Democrat Tony Evers, took the side of the rioters. They did it instantly before the facts were in. They took the side of the rioters. Does that surprise you? It shouldn't. We spent all last week watching the leaders of the Democratic Party make excuses for the destruction of American cities at their convention. They benefit from it, and that's how you know it will continue. Drew Hernandez has chronicled a lot of what's going on, one of the few who has. He's an investigative journalist, host of the YouTube show Lives Matter. He took some of the pictures we just showed you. He joins us tonight. Drew, thanks for coming on. So give us a broader understanding of what happened in Kenosha.
Yeah, so a couple hours, after the shooting took place, I was actually documenting those clips you played of the Chicago BLM activists making radical claims. I was actually out in Chicago documenting that, but then the shooting took place and I caught wind of it on Twitter, and so I just kind of, went with it. I paid for an Uber, went all the way up to Wisconsin, and literally right when I arrived, they already had garbage trucks aflames. Some BLM militants and rioters were out with semi-automatic rifles, policing the police. And right after the police tear gassed a lot of the rioters because it was getting very violent, that's when the BLM activists, this was all Black Lives Matter, started to loot, started to vandalize, just rip local businesses to shreds. I don't know how much in monetary value of damage that they've caused. I'm pretty sure we'll find out, but they tore up this local little town to pieces. And it's very sad to know that elected officials are siding with these criminals. They're criminals, Tucker. And it's a shame that they're siding with them and not the local businesses that could have possibly lost their business for the rest of their lives. Yeah. And that's a story that needs to be talked about, Tucker, and I don't know why they do that.
Well, what's interesting is that the big tech monopolies fund the destruction of independent businesses. So when we awaken from this nightmare and the entire U.S. economy consists of like 5 monopolies running everything, maybe we'll see a connection between their support for this stuff and the outcome. Do you think that's possible?
Absolutely, because Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization, and that's not your opinion, that's not my opinion, that's from their own mouths. The co-founder of Black Lives Matter makes it very clear we are trained Marxists. And with that, alongside of that, they are well-trained, well-funded, and well-organized. And everything you see out on the streets is not by coincidence. These things are very well-organized. When I'm out on the streets, Tucker, they are well-organized. They are moving on the streets, they know what they want to do, they know what they're gonna do. They go from business to business. They know exactly what the game plan is when something like this unfolds. We can't sit here and think that this isn't strategic violence, Tucker, because it definitely is.
Of course it is, and it's all to the benefit of one political party. Drew Hernandez, thank you for your coverage of this. I appreciate it. Hope you'll come back.
Thank you.